St. Lucia is undoubtedly a world-class tourism destination. Growth in the cruise sector alone has expanded from 84,000 in 1987 to over 670,000 in 2020. These numbers now emphasize the need to manage beaches in order to safeguard visitor expectations, health, and safety.
The daily problems mean that we can continue this approach.
I want to say we are in a crisis, but in all this there's an opportunity again.
Some of them have had some very dreadful experiences.
I want to advocate in terms of increasing access or open other beach areas.
Average cruise ship now is carrying over 3,000 people. It's not uncommon to see 4 cruise ships in the bay at one time in Castries Harbour. What happens if the passengers decide that they all want to come off and enjoy the island and enjoy the beaches 4 days a week, because they're coming 4 days a week in the season? What plans are there in place to handle that kind of mass of people?
Well, there isn't a plan, and there's not a blueprint to say, and you're right, when SLASPER says we have 4 ships are calling with a total capacity of 8,000, luckily they all don't disembark. If they did, where are we going to put these people? I mean, 4 cruise ships in town and 30% get off, and Castries is chaotic in terms of traffic. Point Seraphine, the boarding area is chaotic, and there's no visible enforcement on the water.
The tourism sector is expanding, and there is always a need for more space whenever a product expands, and it takes on more space, which is natural. So the growth of the industry is welcome. However, it brings about its own challenges that the state must look forward to addressing, but it will only be increasing, which is to our own economic advantage.
First and foremost, an urgent matter of proper management, right? And once we have gotten that properly organized, then we can start to push out in terms of the re-educating and the raising of awareness. Clearly, we cannot move forward developing other spaces the way in which we have developed the existing ones. We have not managed it as effectively as we ought to have. So waste disposal, for example, is very poor. Attention to anyone succumbing to some sort of health-related illness, would be very challenging given the way in which we currently use the spaces, right? So moving forward, there are a lot of ideas on other spaces that can be expanded, that can be used, but now it requires a certain amount of infrastructural investment to make sure that it can be used more effectively, right? So there are lots of ideas in that regard, but there is an absence of legislation and policy and commitment overall by a sufficient number of stakeholders in order to effect the change that we critically need.
We issue licenses, people have to apply, they go through a vetting process, they must get the police record. There is a vending committee that looks at these applications, but they also must supply us with two reference letters, people to say, look, I know this person and this person is okay. You know, plus we still do our background checks. So to make sure that people who are on the beaches and working with tourists, and
I am not aware that any new spaces have opened up that will seriously reduce the impact on the existing spaces right now. So we've got to open up new bays and new beaches more quickly than we have in the past, and we've got to ensure that we invest sufficiently in the infrastructure needed so that not only can we manage waste and we manage the impact of the footfall in these areas, but also that we can create and optimize economic gains for vendors and other sellers of products and services who can create meaningful economic gains from these new economic spaces along the marine coastline.
We need to develop a strategy and a management system because we now have the potential impact on water quality. The water quality is going to impact on the biodiversity of that area. Already there's a question about the water quality along the west coast. We need to deal with that. We can't bury our heads in the sand because if you're going to be developing sites and attractions along the west coast, God forbid if you're developing them where the water is almost on the level of a cesspool.
There are popular beach sites in St. Lucia, and we know of the Rodney Bay, and we know of the Ridgeways, and we know of the Unchaste and those areas. However, one of the issues we have had, and even the boat operators have brought about a solution, is in terms of making other beach areas accessible. And I'm thinking that that's something we have to look at seriously. The increase in visitor arrivals will only add additional pressure on the popular beach areas there.
And this is not an attempt to say the beaches are for hoteliers, but you have to understand there's a contractual obligation here. A hotel does an investment, it has a lease on a beach. That doesn't mean the beach becomes private, but you need to have a carrying capacity for that beach, and you need to manage it. A lot of the boats that take persons are used to going to specific sites, so they don't want to try something new. They're much more beautiful reefs that put aside between Unchaste Bay and Ansmamin, but people don't want to use them because they want to go in a particular area. So the emphasis now is a management system. The west coast of St. Lucia needs structure. We need to have key agencies come together, SLASPA, NCA, Marine Police, SMMA, and the hotels that are involved. And basically, one, find new areas to explore. Two, develop sites, beaches that will have the infrastructure to bring all these cruise ship people because we are on a collision course. We are in a crisis mode. The cruise ship sector is competing openly for the use of beaches with nationals and hotel guests. And I'm not putting one against the other, but it has become unsustainable. It's now a health and safety issue. And I hate to say it, but 9 persons in 10 years have died coming in contact with small boats, have died. God forbid, we should not be waiting for another tragedy.
You know, there are certain destinations in which they have literally shut down beaches or cordoned off and closed down other areas in order to allow the coral to regenerate and the ecosystem to regenerate. They have made some very unpopular decisions in order to manage the volume of foot traffic on certain spaces that have historic and cultural value to certain destinations. We still do not have consensus on what those volumes would be for St. Lucia, right? And like you said, it is one thing to promise an expansion of an industry, and it is one thing to make a promise to visitors in terms of what your experience is going to be. But then when we look at what is happening now, the proof before us right now is that we are unable to sustainably honor those things. And it is slipping out of our hands faster than we are willing to address the problem.
The dive sector has grown, and it has grown primarily because we have some scenic, or had some scenic reefs below the water. And part of the success of the dive sector was due to an institution called SMMA, the Soufrière Marine Management Association, because there was sustainable development. We were able to manage the numbers manage the use of the resource, and as a result the reefs blossomed, there wasn't an overuse, etc. As a result of that, Abaglo, the Dive Association, became part of SMMA, and it grew to the point now there are hoteliers that are involved in dive shows, and there are people staying at specific resorts for diving. But these very same sites that are now successful are being oversubscribed. Case in point is the Anshasne Bay, Anscoshore Bay, etc. And we're not saying that you need that people shouldn't be using it, or it needs to be owned by a particular resort. We need to manage the use. We need to manage the numbers that are going there, because you may well know, Andre, tanning oil, plastic cups, anchors, and people take constructive criticism the wrong way. We need to begin to critique the systems. That doesn't mean we're being overly critical about an agency, but there are some agencies that have the mandate and they need to fulfill it. You can't be taking fees or taxes from a person and not delivering a service. We need law enforcement on the water. The Marine Police is challenged. We know that they have to police the coast, but there need to be a dedicated section of the Marine Police to deal with water-based tourism. It's like putting all these cars on the road and not having any traffic police. And the other most important element is we need product development, because this marine-based tourism is becoming a hustle. A guy, and this is good. I was big on promoting nationals owning vessels, but now that they have the vessel, it's like they jump in the boat and it's a hustle, every man for himself. And I'm going to drive the boat the way I want. I'm going to drop people on any beach. I am going to go between divers, swimmers. I'm going to compete with, it's a hustle, and we need to step back, put these young men and women in service areas and let them be part of the experience.
The area will only grow in leaps and bounds, and we have to be proactive. And then being proactive again is going around right now to identify again beach areas. I mean, they are out there. It's a matter of the relevant policymakers investing and developing those areas. I know government have spoken about some additional areas in the southern part of the island, and I know they are on stream, but I will not mention those areas now. But we want to advocate in terms of increasing access or making open other beach areas, which would reduce the congestion in the northern part of the island and also in the southern part of the island.
Our vendors, they're happy. They are happy, because the more tourists visit, the more tourists you are visiting, is the more money they make. If you look around, you see the beach chairs.
Yes.
You have so many beach chairs, and some of them are saying, oh, we need more beach chairs because of the influx.
People, yeah.
But yet at the same time, we have to be careful about the overcrowding on the beaches, looking at our beach capacity, So I hope, out of all of this, that we can get to a compromise.
Yes, I agree.
Actually went about for the past 10 or 12 years to educating all the boat operators. So each person you see behind the wheel of a vessel, they are trained, they are certified by SLASPA through the Maritime Administration. And we also have a rigorous inspection regime, SLASPA Maritime Division. Annually, or even biannually, we go on board those boats to ensure the boats have all the safety equipment on board. The captain is trained, the crew is trained, life fire extinguishers are all right. Everybody has a life jacket as well. So that in itself, the safety component of it has encouraged other persons to enter the industry. The development at Pigeon Point with the houses there and the shops there, they have also inputted washrooms in the facility. So then you can control pollution in that area. You can control the influx of sewage into the swimming area. So it has to be a holistic approach.
The challenge you have is that you have persons paying top dollar, sitting under an umbrella, for the day and expecting a certain service and experience. And then you have a guy who was paid a certain price for a cruise ship experience, who comes with his jug of rum punch and wants to sit next to that person and even try to encroach on the shade in that person's umbrella. So we need to manage them, and again, I think the way to do it is to know what's the carrying capacity of whatever location, put amenities for all, nationals, hotel guests, etc., and respect the privacy of persons paying top dollar. And that's not a difficult concept to grasp.
Because we all benefit from that crucial tourism dollar. Hence, we all have to have the inputs and come up with some solutions wherein all the parties have to coexist and we have to compromise.
Let's look for sites, let's look for locations where we can put the infrastructure for the vendors, for the nationals involved, and have the infrastructure, and by extension create the opportunity for economic empowerment. Because we can do this, we just need to be collective and we need to recognize that we are in a crisis mode, especially those in the corridor of power.
Yeah.